Hi, this is JP Morgan.
And this is Kenneth Merrill.
And we've got CHANDA here with us. And we're going to take a look at two film cameras.
We have the Pentax 645 N2 and the Contax 645. These are some of the last medium format film bodies ever produced.
It's really interesting to look at these two film cameras. And why did we choose these film cameras? Well, because these really are the two go-to cameras for wedding shooters these days. The two most popular. I mean, everyone's shooting on everything from Hasselblads to everything. But these really are kind of the mainstay for wedding shooting.
Well, some of the reason for that is they both have pretty good autofocus systems. They are like early autofocus, so there's no eye detect or anything like that going on, but it is autofocus. They also have, very fast motor drives, all the kind of basic bells and whistles you would get on a film camera in the early 2000s.
The nice thing about that is you do have the motor drive, you do have the autofocus, and you have a meter inside. So if you want to use a meter and you're shooting quickly, and that's why a lot of people like these.
Because these bodies are relatively new, they're only 20 years old as opposed to 30 or 40 years old, you can actually kind of rely on the meter, especially if you're shooting negative film, you have a lot of latitude.
There is a price barrier between these two. I mean, the Contax is way more expensive. This is like $3,000 versus you can get into that for $1,000.
Yeah.
But this is a Swiss Planar T Zeiss lens, incredibly sharp lens. It's really in the same category as a Hasselblad when it comes to lens quality.
And you also have removable backs. The Pentax does not have a removable back, which means you have to fire through your whole roll of film before you can change. That's a huge bonus. Another thing I want to mention is that the lens on this only goes down to a 2.8, whereas the lens on the Contax goes down to a 2. A lot of people think that that's kind of a big deal. They like the idea of shooting at a 2, especially with the medium format. That means your depth of field is going to be super shallow. So I'm interested to take some portraits and compare the two, see how much of a difference it makes. Also just compare the glass. This doesn't feel quite as nice as that does.
No.
So we'll see.
I would be shocked if those were as sharp as this. I would be really shocked. But so let's get out there, let's shoot some images and just compare them, see what we got. So we're back here in the Slanted Lens lab. We should have lab coats. Lab coats would be cool.
Yes.
Actually, I wore a lab coat in that one. Lighting in the kitchen.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, let's look at the images.
Right off the bat, you do see there is a little bit more warmth in the Pentax. This image is a little out of focus with the Pentax, unfortunately, but you do see that warmth there and a little more contrast with the Zeiss lens.
A little more contrast. The color's a little deeper. And now, you are scanning these things, so you're going through a process of processing and then scanning. So the person who is making the decisions on these scans, you can push those around a lot. It's just like being in Lightroom or Photoshop, Camera Raw or something. So I would guess you could make these things match pretty close if you wanted to, but out of the gate, that Contax just has a richer, heavier color, heavier blacks as well. Contrast is very heavy.
Here we have our shot of the Capitol building. Out of focus again on the Pentax.
We're at a distance here because we didn't see this until you get some of these 2.8 close-up shots. But at this distance, with that background that far away, the way they fall out of focus feels very similar as far as how out of focus they are. They're both at 2.8, and they feel very similar. If you look at the bokeh on the Pentax on the right, it's kind of more oblong.
Yeah, that's
where
true.
it's more round on the Contax.
Yeah, that's
Contax,
interesting.
Contax.
In the context of
In
the
the
Contax.
context of the Contax.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
Yeah. So when we were out working, this is a little slower with the autofocus. When we were in the sunlight trying to focus, the Contax was a little slower than the Pentax.
But then we came back here and we did try kind of pointing at stuff here in this garage. It's a much lower light situation, not a lot of contrast. And that's where the Pentax really pulled ahead. I mean, it's slower and it hunts sometimes, but it would actually find a subject and stop and land somewhere with pretty much every frame. The Contax never stopped hunting.
It was just hunting, and because it can't lock, it won't take an image.
Yeah.
So it's just hunting in several different situations where it was just light, darker areas. So I would say autofocus in a low light situation with this is unusable, and that seems a lot more usable. And that is, the viewfinder is brighter there than what you see through this. So that's ease of use in that way. That's quite an advantage.
Here we have finally a match. They're both sharp. It's interesting. You get with that less contrast, with less contrast in the Pentax, it washes out some of the highlights. It seems. Yeah, I've got to say I like I'm liking the Contax better. This image is out of focus, but I'm liking the contrast better with the Zeiss lens.
A little heavier
Just pops
contrast.
A little more. Yeah.
So on this one, you see the difference of 2.8 with the Pentax, but look at the 2.0 on the Contax. It really falls out of focus much quicker. It's much prettier in the background. A beautiful bokeh there. I love the way it resolves the lines around the trees. It just has a really pretty kind of bokeh and out of focus in the background. So pretty.
Yeah.
The Pentax doesn't fall that much out of focus at that distance. It's
Yeah.
not really falling.
I mean, it does look like she's a little further away, but not that much. It shouldn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah.
I am very, very impressed by the way the Contax lens performs in this image.
Mm-hmm.
Super pretty.
Well, now on this one, they're definitely not further away. These are both shot at 2.8. They're both same distance from the background.
And same distance from the camera.
And that the Contax falls way out of focus faster.
Yeah, but they're both at 2.8, which is interesting. So
Yeah.
the fall off is quicker
Yeah.
with that
Falls
Contax.
off a lot faster.
Yeah, I like, she pops out more in the image. The subject pops more with the Contax, which I like.
Yeah.
Here, this is probably the image I feel like where they look the most similar.
Mm-hmm.
You do have a little more detail in her skin with the Contax.
You know, it's a little, you do, and I think it's because of the contrast you have in the Contax. You get those nice lines in her face, just a little more definition there, whereas it feels very, very, almost like you've softened her face. It's a very soft look.
And here's our final image. I'm sad the Pentax is not quite focused right here.
Yeah, it's not focused on her right eye, it's focused on her left eye, and that makes a big difference.
I should have selected the other eye in the eye detect on the menu. Oh, wait.
Yeah, oh, that's right. These cameras come from there, just detect something. Focus on something. Try to detect something.
Yeah, again, a little bit of warmth. You're seeing it in the leaves and things. Very pretty image, I think, especially from the Contax.
Well, just the bokeh, the way it falls out of focus in the
it's
background. I love
beautiful.
this kind of look.
Yeah.
So pretty. If you're a geek about metadata, it is interesting because the Contax, it is recording all the metadata in the margin of the frames. So when you look at the negatives, you can see the metadata in the. We didn't get that on the Pentax. There's some writing there, but it's hard to discern.
It's illegible. Yeah. All right. So what's the conclusion?
Well, I think for me, if I was a wedding shooter and I was doing this, seriously doing this, I would get a Contax.
Really?
I would. I would spend the extra.
Even though the autofocus is a little
I
more
would manual
sketchy.
focus the Contax. So if
There
you're
you go.
not into that thought and you don't want to manual focus it, which is not easy, but if you're shooting film, I think you're not trying to grab a shot.
That's true.
You're gonna have a second to focus,
true.
take your image.
That's true.
I just think they look beautiful. They just
Yeah.
have a very pretty look. The Pentax is not far behind, but it's also $1,000 versus $3,000.
Yeah, I feel like the Pentax is a great option if you're trying to get into film, get into the medium format world. I mean, it's super affordable, and it's one of the newest medium format cameras you can buy. It was made in 2002, so
yeah, and I've seen them as low as $650 or $700
for a body.
Yeah, for a body easily.
That is a great deal.
Yeah.
So either way, you can't go wrong either way. It just depends on what are your needs, what do you want to spend it on. I do agree with JP though. I think the image out of the Contax is just really
You've
pretty.
got that Zeiss lens.
The
I mean,
lens
there's just so
makes a
many
big
things
difference.
about it. All right, so there's a look at those two cameras. If you're enjoying this kind of information, make sure you subscribe so we can bring you further videos in the future. Let us know if there's something else you'd like to hear about with regards to film. Love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we're always open to suggestions on things that you want to hear, things you want to learn about, stuff you want us to compare. We love all those thoughts. So leave us a comment below. We'll take a look and see what we can do.
One of the things that's coming soon is looking at a 400 Tri-X pushed to 1600, and how can you do a digital image that matches that grain and look in black and white. So that's a lesson that's coming.
That's going to be interesting.
Yep, so keep those cameras rolling.
And keep on clicking.